Dear modern human, how do you embody yourself as you face the screen, the machine, the tools and toys of your time? As human beings with bodies on an earth of nature, how is being human nature on earth fundamentally shifting with the exponentially augmenting influence of technology? As we experience the confluence of body, mind, consciousness, gender, race, identity revolutions, environmental devastation, and ubiquitous technological life, we face unique opportunities and dilemmas for embodied human learning and reflection. I propose that there are great shifts at work in the self-identity of the human race. In this fast-paced new millennium, I'm really wondering how we keep our ethical balance in this visual, virtual terrain. In the realms of work, play, and rest, what is influencing the further embodiment of humanity on this planet Earth? If the body sits to game for play instead of running with exertion on the playground, if fine motor thumbs move more than gross motor limbs, if breath cannot hear itself panting in the chase of friends, if youth are yelling at machines alone in their bedrooms with virtual friends out there internationally, if friends are virtual instead of embodied and present, if they look at one another online even when they are actually side by side, then what is the embodiment of play now? How are modern humans negotiating their own embodiment? How is play being challenged, augmented, diversified, altered, discouraged, or supported by technology itself? Let's step back just a moment in time. We started this millennium with fright about computers in an event nicknamed Y2K. Human beings were hijacked literally by entrepreneurs of computer industry to dive headfirst into a new level of technological investment and computerized culture, compelled to fear that computers would not be able to handle a year change from 1999 to 2000, requiring all four digits to change. Companies bought into computer updates in order not to crash, while the revamp instilled lots of new bonuses. Suddenly, workplaces also gained new levels of surveillance, employing keyboards as snitches. Computers, most widely employed through workplaces, became policed. Through quickly evolving technologies and new needs for autonomy, privacy leapt onto personal phone devices, gaining a whole separate life outside of the boss's eye to enact self-care and play. That same paradigm plays itself out now in households among family members, with all operating under gross overarching digital surveillance, and yet all hiding behind codes and passwords at the same time, sometimes succeeding to have parental permissions over children's digital use. The landscape of safety, privacy, exploration, play, and self-expression has changed quickly and constantly since the beginning of this millennium. How have human beings internalized this newly watched notion? In this world where fluidity in defiance of the gender binary is a deep cultural revolution at work, how does technology play its part? While identities in social media may follow one in this day and age, haunting them with accountability to a published past? Do people seek out freedoms of identity exploration in the virtual world? Do virtual avatars allow playful experimentation of identity through choiceful collaging of characteristics and processes of curiosity and self investigation, not necessarily fused with realistic self representation? How boundaried to the virtual world are these identities? How accountable to real life are they? In a time of heightened sensitivities around race and gender and sexuality, how much fluidity and flexibility do people have with their avatars? Is this space between real and virtual a freedom? Is it a place for imagination? Is the virtual world a dress rehearsal for potential futures in the real world? Do virtual identity experiments impact change in our essential being, in our selfhood? Have your own avatars influenced your own becoming and transformation? The power of technology to influence our becoming is nothing to take lightly. How we guide our virtual explorations toward humanity's healthy, embodied self development may be one of the important questions to hold sacred as we zoom forth into the virtual abyss. Have you ever engaged in avatar work that expanded your proclivities toward justice rather than toward violence? Great strides in artificial intelligence have coincided with great strides in understanding neurodiversity as well. How these fields have implicitly and explicitly informed one another is quite wonderful. In simulation technology, as we encounter the cutting edge of virtual human representation, the processes and purposes of creating simulated humans have been unfolding exponentially in the past 2 decades, primarily motivated by lucrative gaming and entertainment technologies. The talented insight into human expression that informs that process seems strongly aligned with the modern educational modalities developing to meet the needs of people on the autism spectrum. In both cases, there is a very subtle and very deep attention paid to the superficial, nuanced details of gesture and expression that indicate prosocial posture. The lemniscate of decoding humanity from social emotional learning to artificial intelligence beckons questions about meaning itself. Can we actually just theatricalize and two-dimensionalize and act out empathy? Innovative curriculums offer spectrum children the contrived tools of communication which don't come naturally to them, just as simulation experts program artificial intelligence to tilt heads to convey sensitivity and listening postures, trying to bottle empathy. Does the gesture seep into the doer to awaken meaning itself, or does the gesture just seep into the viewer to awaken meaning therein? Does the ensuing reaction of the viewer awaken an authentic reaction in the doer? So then, what are the small teachable tools of embodying humanity? Like all human inventions, the greatest advancements hold in them the key to the greatest destruction. Just as we can create chemotherapy from a mustard gas once used in world wars, we can create a smile or a tear from technology that has barely transcended square pixels. The abstraction of pro-social embodiment to a set of gestures, tones, and mindful phrases brings forth a strange dissonance between social authenticity and social talent. Even in artificial intelligence, the understanding that human communication is more than just skin deep has compelled the industry to move far beyond robotics into an anatomy of expressivity. Looking at the artificial human figures of simulation technology, it is striking how nuanced the decoding of motion is in indicating the embodiment of the upper body and face. In contrast to that, there is an absolute lack of sophistication in the belly, waist, and hips of figures in artificial intelligence. The issue of representation holds a tension between embodiment and objectification. The image of the human body, like the image of the face, is an objectification of embodiment, and it can often have the effect of triggering disembodiment. It may be showing something very personal and humane through the objectified vision, but the viewer may either identify with the person pictured or not. With an image of a person, we are being presented layers of gender, ethnicity, style, weight, class, all these elements which may contribute to whether we identify with the image or not. If we identify with the body in the image, sometimes we can imagine ourselves in the experience being represented, and we can be transported to that place of embodiment, that yoga posture, that warm beach. However, just as often, it serves to do the opposite instead, excluding some from the vicarious entry it affords to others. Since you can't represent every kind of person in one vision, the tension between objectification and embodiment translates easily into bias and exclusion. While representation of a person doesn't necessarily invite people to see themselves, representation of an activity or an artifact of activity can sometimes translate very differently. Images of activities and artifacts may be more inviting than images of people doing those things. In striving to convey equity through representational inclusion, after all, it is nearly impossible to convey everyone at once. The challenge of bringing everyone in remains. Tracking our authenticity and humanity through the experiences of technological engagement, be they for multimodal literacy, for social play, for societal improvement, or for self-expressivity. This becomes elusive when the act of entering the technological vortex is so easy as pushing a button. Harnessing the direction in which this wildly unleashed technological bronco is galloping, humans must stay rooted in their breathing embodiment, guided by their ethical compass. They must take mindful time for nature immersion and meta time for questioning their computer usage. We must keep exploring our human nature through and beyond the wondrous machines of our making.